We launched and scaled my primary business today from zero to almost $20 million in revenue its first year. How did we do it? Well, marketing. We knew our numbers probably better than most. And in this video, I'm going to share with you the only metrics that your head of marketing should be paying attention to. Hang with me. Let's go.
This is my man, Keala Kanae. Keala Kanae, he takes entrepreneurs on a journey to grow their business.
There is a massive amount of numbers that you can track in business, and in fact, the bigger your business gets, the more numbers there are to follow. But not all numbers are meaningful. Before I break down for you, what metrics that our director of marketing is responsible for and is most critical to the success of the business, first let's start with our overall philosophy and framework around numbers and KPI. So I actually got this from one of my first business mentors. His name is Cameron Harold, and he is most well known for taking 1-800-GOT-JUNK to a $100 million company as their COO. And we call it the dashboard and undercarriage approach to KPI. So think about it like this. When you're driving your car down the road, you have a dashboard. Does that dashboard tell you everything that's possibly happening in your vehicle? No, it does not. You just know, how much gas you have, how fast you're going, what are the RPMs, how hot or cold is the vehicle. Basically, you have enough information to know whether or not you're going to arrive at your destination alive and on time. And that's all you need to know on most days. However, if all of a sudden smoke started coming out of the engine, you had to pull the car over, lift up the hood, you weren't able to figure out what was happening, you took that car down to a service station, they would plug it into a computer, and they'd start pulling out all this other data that you didn't even know existed. That is what we call the undercarriage. So in other words, in our business, we have dashboard KPIs. These are the most important numbers. They give us the most amount of information with the least amount of numbers to pay attention to. And then, if anything turns red on the dashboard, in other words, we start to see that we are falling behind on goal, or we are about to miss our plans for the business, then we can pull out the undercarriage data, look at that, and figure out how to get those dashboard KPIs back in line with our goals. So with that said, these are the most important metrics that the director of marketing in our organization is responsible for. Now, obviously, this is going to be dependent on your particular business model. So I'm going to share with you what works for us in our business model, and you might want to take it from there and adapt. The first KPI here is customer acquisition rate. Our customer acquisition rate is the rate at which we are acquiring customers on a daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly, annual basis. So if this month, as an example, we know that we need to acquire 1,000 customers in order to hit our top line revenue goal, then we can break that down and understand that we have to acquire about 34 customers a day. So the director of marketing must know, are we acquiring enough customers on a daily basis in order for us to meet our monthly, quarterly, and annual goals in terms of revenue? If you are not, well then none of the rest is going to matter. Now next in these KPIs, we have the cost per acquisition. This is what we are paying to acquire a customer. Now I've also seen this called CAC, cost of acquiring a customer. I don't like to use that term because if you abbreviate it and sound it out, it sounds a little bit like eggplant. So anyway, in our business, we know that we are willing to pay up to 30% of what a customer is going to be worth to us inside of 90 days. In other words, if we know that on average, a customer is worth $1,000 inside of 90 days, then we know that we can also then pay up to $300 to acquire that customer. If we're paying more than $300 to acquire a customer, well then we are starting to impact the overall health and well-being of the business by impacting its margin. Now, to be fair, we do actually include a 5% buffer there, so we can actually afford to pay up to 35% of what a customer is worth, but we try to typically aim for 30%. So what's critical to know here is even if we're hitting our customer acquisition rate, so if we are bringing in this example, 34 customers a day, but are we bringing them in at a rate that is profitable? In other words, are we paying at or below what our cost per acquisition goal is? Because what's the use of acquiring more customers if you're not going to be profitable with those customers? Now, thirdly, the next metric is average customer value. And when I talk about average customer value, I want to be clear about something here. A lot of times people talk about lifetime value, LTV. What's the lifetime value of a customer? We don't really use that term in my business because for the most part, everybody talks about it, but nobody seems to know how to effectively measure it. It's like a wazi, a woozy. It's like it doesn't even really exist. I don't know, right? And really, what is the use of measuring the value of a customer over the life of that customer. Many of our customers will come back and buy stuff from us for years. Are we supposed to measure, how much they're worth over years of purchases? And then again, as I said, does it even matter? I mean, really only a business like Google, as an example, could afford to acquire a customer and then not make a profit for a year, 2 years, or maybe longer because they have such deep pockets. But for most businesses, that is an unacceptable amount of risk. They will end up bankrupt if they were to acquire customers and not make a profit for as long as a year. So we pay attention to average customer value, which we define as what is a customer worth on average within 90 days. By having that 90-day window, we're able to be aggressive enough that we can afford to pay more than our competitors to acquire a customer, and we're being conservative enough that we know that we can float the books for 90 days without it hurting the well-being of the business. So what's most critical for us in marketing is to know how much can we afford to pay to acquire a customer based on what that customer is going to be worth inside of 90 days. And if we do all of our numbers correct, we will protect the health and well-being and the profit of the business. So these three numbers work in conjunction with each other. Without having these three, we really can't tell the health or well-being of the overall marketing department. Now, if we take this one level deeper, we can then begin to define, what impacts each of these metrics themselves. So this would now be the undercarriage portion of the KPIs. So if we know that we're falling behind on the customer acquisition rate, so let's say in this example, instead of acquiring 34 customers a day, I'm acquiring only 30 customers a day. Well, I know I got to ramp that up. Well, there's only two metrics that can really impact that: the spend and the CPA. In other words, am I spending enough to be able to acquire a customer? So as an example, if I need to acquire 34 customers a day and I know that on average I'm going to pay $100 to acquire a customer, then I know that I should be spending $3,400 a day. So if I'm the director of marketing and I'm looking in it here and I'm seeing that we're falling behind on our customer acquisition rate, I can simply see, are we spending enough in order for us to meet our customer acquisition rate goal, for us to acquire the customers that we need in order to hit our top line revenue for the month? The only numbers that I can change there is the spend. Am I spending enough? Or the CPA. So if I am not spending enough, but I'm already over on my CPA, it doesn't matter. If I'm acquiring 30 customers a day right now, so I'm falling behind on our customer acquisition rate, but my CPA is already at its max, meaning I'm already paying the most that I can afford to acquire a customer in order to keep the business healthy, then I have really no room to grow here. I can't just go and increase the spend, because by and large, the more that you spend on advertising, the more you're going to impact your cost per acquisition. In other words, the more money you spend on advertising, the higher your cost per acquisition. Now, those numbers aren't directly parallel, but spend will absolutely over time impact the cost of you acquiring a customer. So if I've already hit my cost per acquisition limit, I can't just go increase the spend. Now I have to figure out a different problem. I have to figure out how to bring down the cost per acquisition so that I can create enough room there for me to then begin to increase the spend, right? So if I can bring down what it's costing me to acquire a customer, then I can begin to spend more and bring up the customer acquisition rate. So now we can take a look at what's going to impact the cost per acquisition. So here we have the click-through rate. So what is the click-through rate on our ads? Our landing page conversion rate. When somebody clicks on one of our ads and hits one of our landing pages, how effective are those pages at converting those visitors into leads, subscribers, or whatever you want to call it in your business? What is our cost per lead? In other words, what's it costing us now to generate a lead? What is our view rate on our content? So typically, if we're producing an ad, we want people to click on that ad and then view some sort of sales material, whether that's going to be a video sales letter, whether that's going to be a webinar, whether that's going to be, signing up to come to some sort of a live event or a virtual event or whatever it might be in your business. So there's going to be typically some form of messaging there that's going to ultimately be trying to convince them to make a sale or take the next step in your sales process. What is our view rate on that? So if it's a video and it's 5 minutes long before we get to the call to action, and we're losing most of our visitors at 2 minutes or 3 minutes, well, we know, okay, we've got to increase the view rate. We need to make a more attractive hook or potentially add some elements into the video that get people to stay around longer. If people are attending our webinar and they're not staying all the way up until the 60-minute mark when we actually pitch our offer, well, then we know that we need to add some additional hooks or add some elements into that webinar that are going to get them to stick around longer. So we need to increase the view rate. And then we have our CPM. So I'm not necessarily saying that these are all ranked in order. CPM is our cost per 1,000 impressions. So what is it costing us to deliver our ad in front of 1,000 people at a time? So this number is going to change based on the platform and based on the amount of people that are advertising on that platform or trying to get in front of our ideal customer on any given day. So this number fluctuates often. So we might see, hey, we're not, acquiring enough customers in order for us to hit our customer acquisition rate. However, it's because our CPM has gone up, and so now we have to make our ads even more effective because we're paying more just to deliver them in front of our ideal audience. That might be a potential cause. And then another number that we might look at is our cost per saw offer. In other words, what is it costing us to get someone to actually see our offer? So very closely related to our view rate. When we started measuring this, it really changed some of our efforts in marketing. We really began to see how important it is to create a seamless sales process in which we minimize the cost of somebody actually seeing what we have to offer. Because until somebody sees what you have to offer, they can't possibly buy from you. So as an example, in one of our primary funnels, we use a webinar. Somebody has to stick until the 60-minute mark in order to see that we even have an offer. So regardless of what we're paying to get them to click, what are we paying in order to get them to stay around on that webinar all the way up until they get to see the offer? And how then can we bring that number down? How can we add more hooks, more engaging elements to get more people to stick around and see the offer? And that is going to obviously bring down our cost per acquisition. So change any one of these numbers and you are going to impact your cost per acquisition. Improve this, end of story. Finally, our last metric here is the average customer value. So here, our director of marketing is going to have to know several things that they're going to have to go and find out, most likely from our sales team. Some of those numbers might include what is our connection rate. So of the people that buy our product, how many of them are being connected with somebody on our sales team who can then take them to that next step in our sales process? What is our average appointment value? So we measure our sales team by average appointment value. We don't really pay much attention to, well, what is the sales rep's conversion rate, or what is their average offer that they're making on the phone, or how many offers a day do they make, and all these things that most sales teams pay attention to. We don't. We pay attention to the average appointment value because we have found that that is the most cascading number in the sales organization. In other words, when somebody comes through our process, at some point they book an appointment with somebody on our sales team. What is the average value of that appointment? Here's an example. If somebody on my sales team has an average appointment value of $1,000, but somebody else on the sales team has an average appointment value of $600, then when somebody books an appointment with this person, we don't make $600. We have an opportunity cost of $400 because this sales rep is less effective than this sales rep. Does that make sense? And so once we know the average appointment value of our overall sales team and of each individual person on the sales team, if their average appointment value falls below our goal, we know that we can then go look at their sales conversion rate, their offer rate, the average size of the offer that they make, these sorts of things. So when somebody falls behind on average appointment value, we can coach them up and bring that number back up. Why do we measure average appointment value versus the average value of a completed call? Well, plainly put, because salespeople can lie about whether or not they completed a phone call. They can't lie about whether or not they had an appointment that went on their calendar because that all happens inside of a closed system in which we have direct access to all of the metrics. So they can't fudge the numbers. It keeps salespeople honest, basically. Now, next on in line there, we have the average completed call value. In other words, once a sales rep completes a call with a customer, and in other words, they've taken them through the entire sales process, what is the average value of that? And then we have our average order value. What is average order value? Average order value is the average value of somebody at the checkout process. So when somebody buys one of our products, we offer them several other products that they can buy immediately thereafter. All of those additional offers, or what we call one-time offers, are going to increase or impact the average order value. The higher that the average order value is at that moment that they are in the checkout process becoming a customer of ours, the higher that average order value, the more that we can pay to acquire customers in the future, because we're getting more and more of those advertising dollars back. So in order for a director of marketing to effectively know whether or not they are acquiring customers at a rate that is sufficient with us hitting our overall goals, and are they doing it at a cost that is going to be sufficient with protecting the company health and company margin, and what is the customer value overall, so that they can decipher what those other numbers need to be. In other words, if the average customer value is falling, then they know, oh, I can no longer pay $300 to acquire a customer in my example, because the average customer value has fallen down to 900 or 600, whatever the number is. So now they have to begin adjusting. Now if they see that happening, they need to know what other things can they impact or help change so that we can bring this number back up. Because plainly put, the higher the average customer value, the more that we can pay to acquire a customer, which means the faster that we can improve our customer acquisition rate. The faster we can improve our customer acquisition rate, the faster we can hit our overall revenue goals. So listen, I hope you got value out of this video, my friend. And if you are somebody who is committed to success in both life and business, then make sure you subscribe and hit that little bell button so that you get notified every week when I drop more content like this. And in case we've never met before, my name is Keala Kanae. I'm an entrepreneur that got started a few short years ago working in a coffee shop like this, and I've gone on now to build multiple 7- and 8-figure businesses. And I say that only so that you know that everything I share here on my channel comes from the real world knowledge of things that I've learned and applied in order to generate those results. And I share them here in hopes that they help you create similar results as well. So subscribe, hit that little bell notification, and make sure you watch this next video in the lineup where I'm going to show you more insane marketing tactics.